Today, my wife and I are visiting Colonial Williamsburg, an amazing living history museum in Virginia that tells the early part of America's enduring story. Come along with me and my wife as we explore a history buff's paradise. That's coming up next.
This is one of 15 tailor shops that were here in Williamsburg on the eve of the American Revolution, employing at least 70 to 75 tailors between them. It's the largest trade in this city, but it's also the largest trade in every city in the world because everyone needs clothing. And what we make here, people can't purchase ready-made from a store, though there are some exceptions with some styles. And what we make here, you also can't purchase. You don't see being made at home. You really don't see much home manufacture of clothing at all in the 18th century. We have very little evidence for it. And so because of that, everyone needs to be able to access a tailor because everyone needs the work of a tailor. We make something for everyone, if not multiple items in everyone's wardrobes. Things like breeches, coats, waistcoats, jackets, trousers, cloaks, greatcoats, and more for men, as well as some styles of cloaks and some styles of fitted jackets for women, as well as riding habits and stays. Everyone needs these things, whether you're rich or poor, free or enslaved, living out in the frontier or in the city. And the first thing we ask you to do, no matter where a tailor is at, whether here in the city or a country tailor or a traveling tailor, is to have the materials. Because most tailor shops don't sell materials. There's very few in this city, 3 of those 15, including this shop, that did sell materials along with their labor, but the majority don't. So we're expecting you to go to literally anywhere but a tailor shop to purchase materials. And that includes things like fabric, but also buttons, trim, interfacing, even thread. Because that makes up the majority of the cost of your clothing. It's also the great variable in the cost. It's also what determines the function, fashion, and fashionability of your clothes. My labor is actually the smallest amount in the making of your clothes. It's low enough that you all can afford it, and it's actually the same in every single one of the 15 tailor shops here in town for that item. Between those two, most people here in Virginia can certainly afford what they need, certainly never going bankrupt for it, and can also usually afford what they want. When you come to me, though, you can tell me in as much detail what you want and how you want it made, because you have complete control of this process. It's really up to you. And then I'll take your measure. Using a paper tape like this one, there's not a lot of measures on it. You can see that there's 1 or 2, and that is part of our code. It not only tells us where each measurement fell, but what measurement it was. We'll then take that tape using your measurements as guide points to plot out the shape of your breeches or waistcoat or coat directly onto the fabric that you brought us, not using any paper patterns, before cutting it out, sewing it up, and usually just delivering it to your front door in a package with our bill slipped inside. And again, this is just how people get clothes in the 18th century. It's the way that everyone has known it their entire lives, and pretty similar to the way that their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents have gotten their clothes as far back as anyone can remember. So I can go on and on and on, and I can talk in circles, but I'd much rather talk about what interests you. So if you have any questions, please do just ask.
I know I've been told this by other interpreters on previous Williamsburg, but I'm forgetting. What was the difference between a tailor and the millinery shop? Is it more men versus women's clothing, or is it more the type of clothing?
Maybe that. Think of a millinery less so as a trade shop in the same way that we're a trade shop, in that we make everything that we sell. Because most milliners don't make a lot. They mostly sell imported things, and Margaret Hunter was no exception. If you've been to the Mary Dickinson store before it closed, that millinery shop was actually run by a milliner who did not know how to do any of her trade. She was a shop milliner, and so she only sold imported things. Margaret Hunter did know how to do make many of the things that she sold, but not all of them. So think of it more as like a sort of mini boutique department store of all the fashionable things you could possibly want to purchase, potentially being sold in that one space. Now, there is a better comparison between us and the millinery, and it's not because they're a millinery. It's because the millinery also, all the milliners there are also mantua makers. That is a better comparison to us, because they're our sister trade when it comes to clothing. They also make fitted clothing for each person, each individual person. But instead of making it through measurement and pattern like I do, she takes the fabric, lays it on your body, pins and tucks and pleats it into place before taking it off, having used you as her dress form. She mostly makes things for women, just like we mostly make things for men, but we both make clothing for the opposite gender when asked to, or there are many items in our case that we do actually make for women. So it's more so the connection between us and the millinery is because there's mantua makers working there, not because there's a really direct connection between us and the millinery. And then on top of it all, mantua makers and us are connected because not only do we make everything for the person only once asked for it, but also the difference between us is really just our methods of creating the shape of the clothing.
Well, that's a wrap for this Colonial Williamsburg video. I hope you really enjoyed it, getting to see another part of this amazing living history museum. If you like this sort of stuff, check out my other videos. Check out colonialwilliamsburg.org to plan your own visit here, because it's so much cooler in real life than it is on film. Till next time, this is History Buff, TN Photobug signing out, and I'm having a blast with the past.